Welcome. Thanks for joining us here for this public service announcement, 4Cs style. And glad you're here and listening in. Thank you for taking a moment to tune in. I wanted to just share one thing kind of right at the start. We had talked about maybe being able to open up May 5th. I'm going to say probably not. From all indicators, it's going to be a little bit longer before we're going to be able to gather together and worship together. Turns out the governor doesn't call me all that often, but my expectation is that this will kind of open up kind of the way it closed. It kind of went from 250 to 100 to 50 to 10 or 2. And my guess is it's going to open up in that same manner. And so you're going to be patient, and we're going to do this together. And we'll continue to bring as many resources as we possibly can to you and your family and the circumstances of our lives. So I wanted to bring that thought to you, and then I wanted to have another thought with you. I just kind of wanted to chat this through with you. I've started talking about this time period this weird set of circumstances that we're in, as the COVID universe. It feels as though there's a new point. Let's see. It feels as though there's a new center of gravity, that it all spins around this virus, that everything on earth seems to have a new center point that everything gravitates around. It's called this COVID virus. And we hear things. We don't know what the future is going to be like until the virus tells us. And we don't need to wear masks. The virus is okay with that. Oh, wait a minute. Now we need to wear masks. The virus wants us to wear masks. The virus says to the stock market, you down boy. And then the virus says, okay, good. Have a good day. Great. The virus, that's kind of how this seems to be working. The virus seems to be quite powerful. Yesterday, Dr. Fauci, who has become famous with these Trump coronavirus daily briefings, and Dr. Fauci, I respect him a lot, but I'm a quote, he said this: The virus will tell us when we'll be able to reopen. He said, not just in general, but by specific cases. So I have a question for you. I want to know who died and made the coronavirus God. That's what I want to know. Where did that come from? There's enough going on here that it makes us stop and ask the question. And I'm not talking about politics or economics or journalism. I know it's hard to find news that's not coronavirus. I'm talking about something that's maybe more insidious, but maybe more important. See, I fully understand that this virus is a big deal, that people have been killed, that first responders and nurses and doctors are putting themselves in harm's way. Boy, I get all that. I wear my mask. I wash my hands. I keep my distance, mostly. I'm not great at that. It's for real. And so I get that. I'm not diminishing that. I don't want anybody to go on Facebook and short quote me and get any of that wrong. So, but all the same, I'm talking about how this virus has threatened to take a grip on our faith, on our souls. It's that part of the God-like power that we're giving this virus that I'm not happy with. This COVID virus is indeed troubling. The universe that we're living in, this COVID universe, is troubling. There's a lot of confusion. The news about the virus keeps changing. It's like this, the death rate that's now, it's like that. It even depends on who's sharing the news, what agenda they might have. So there's a lot of confusion going on. But the emotions are deeper than that. There's a lot of uncertainty in the future. We have a family, maybe many families, who just recently were told you have a job, and then yesterday learned, no, you don't. And so the future seems to be changing kind of moment by moment, and that's hard. It makes it uncertain. It makes it worrisome. There are heartbreaking stories of loss and sadness, and I find myself sad at times for those who have experienced the loss of a loved one, and they can't be with their loved one in the midst of this hardship. I remember when Susan had her brain hemorrhage, and for 7 to 10 days, she sat largely unconscious, laid unconscious with a ventilator, and I sat in that room hoping she'd survive. And I can't imagine what it would have been like to not be able to be with her in that moment. These are troubling times in the COVID universe. There's a pathway in this universe towards anxiety, and I think also of loneliness. I think of anxiety. We start playing the what if game. We stay up at night and we start catastrophizing. And again, it's not because there isn't catastrophe, but we start making it personal and weaving all sorts of stories. And at nighttime, our imaginations run wild in the worst of ways, and our anxiety level is just off the charts. And then not only is there anxiety, but there's this terrible sense of being overwhelmed right now. We've got moms and dads working from home, and they've got a toddler that isn't going to school, and they got two other kids going to school, and they're trying to teach them and keep their job going. And what little bit of time you used to have in the relentlessness of life, because life is overwhelming anyway, they're finding themselves exhausted, just keeping life together on a day-by-day basis. It's overwhelming, this COVID universe. And then loneliness. Loneliness is a terrible roommate. We're finding people that are alone anyway, largely. And now this virus is coming along, and it's stealing birthdays and anniversaries and Easters from being able to gather with our family. And it's just, I'm not sure if the loneliness isn't one of the greatest evils of this coronavirus universe. So, actually, before I move on, there's one more loss that makes me sad. Our eighth graders, our seniors in high school, our seniors in college are being robbed by this virus of some of the most precious memories of this rite of passage that's called graduation. They don't get to be with their friends on graduation day. They don't get to take their caps off and throw them in the air, walk across the stage and move their tassel. They don't get to experience being with their friends and knocking off the last days of the week and enjoying senior skip day and the like. All of that is it's not something that can be recreated. And so these events are a profound loss for our seniors in high school and our college students, and I'm sorry for them. I'm sad for them. So I want to say to my young friends that I'm sorry. So all this, the COVID life is doing these kind of things to this. They're taking away the moments that can't be recreated. So I want to bring a word of comfort, although I don't think this first one is going to be that much comfort. But I want to eventually. Hang with me, because I think there's a word of comfort that I want to bring. This first point reminds us that we are not the first people or culture to go through a pandemic of loneliness and fear and sadness and grief and loss. But not by a long shot. Just in our lifetimes, we can go back and take a look at the environments of loss and fear and sadness. There's the death of 6 million Jews in the Holocaust, and then 20 million Russians during the days of Stalin. That must have been a time of great fear and isolation, sadness. In our lifetime, in fact, in our recent lifetime, there have been 7 major civil wars in Africa. And these civil wars have killed hundreds of thousands and separated families and thrown them into refugee camps. It's been a torturous set of wars by machete, and it has unleashed sexual assault as a weapon of war. Those are times of great fear and sadness. Refugees are born and die in refugee camps. Millions in northern Africa and into the Middle East, who have never known anything but the refugee camp, an entire nation of refugees. That can't be good. Just by way of pandemics alone, you go back to the Spanish flu in the early 20th century, that killed 30 million people. The HIV/AIDS pandemic in the 80s killed 36 million. You go back in time quite a bit more into the 14th century, the 1300s, for the Black Plague, the bubonic plague, And that killed 200 million people. One of every 3 people died in the Black Plague. So there's a lot of hurt and sadness in the history of humankind. War and disease want to lay claim to the headlines, and they want to lay claim to our lives. Here's the deal. For us right now, that's all we have control over. We can't look back. We shouldn't be comparing. And in our world, when we feel anger and sadness and fear and anxiety and loneliness, that is not a sin. These emotions are emotions that God gave us. And so when we begin to feel overwhelmed, frankly, I'd feel a little worried for you in this COVID universe if you weren't feeling some of these emotions on a very high level. So please don't go on a guilt trip and say to yourself, I'm not doing isolation well. I don't know what isolation well is anyway. No, I want us to look at this soberly, but I also want us to look at this from a perspective where the COVID virus is not God. As I said, war and disease want to be at the head of the line. They want to in some way define you, this sadness and grief and despair. The harsh and troublesome and difficult and tragic things that we're going through, they tend to pull you into their center with a gravitational pull like a black hole. And that we have to resist. We have these fears of loss and anxiety. We play the what-if game, get a little crazy, and then we stop. We stop and take a deep breath, and we remember. We remember this last weekend. This last weekend, and we reflect on Easter. We reflect on the resurrection of our Savior. I said on Sunday that Easter answers every important question for humanity. Every doubt, every worry, every loss, every feeling of hopelessness, the resurrection answers each of those. Our Savior had a recipe for the human condition, for our loneliness, for our worries. And you know what that recipe is? He is the recipe. Our risen Savior is the recipe. He is the recipe by his love, his sovereign plan, his character, his promises. Because he lives, all of his promises are true for us. We don't have to live in fear of the COVID universe. We read that the sovereign Lord is king over all things, that all things are created by him and through him and for him, that nothing happens without his permission, that all things work together for good for those who are called according to his name. We read that he is preparing a place for us, and that those of us who are called by his name will be able to go and be with him and enjoy life abundant. We read that the fullness of the triune God has come to tabernacle with us, to live inside us, and to comfort us and teach us. We read that we are hidden with Christ in heaven at the right-hand side of the Father, and that nothing can snatch us from his hand. So, the virus is not God. The virus does not and must not define us. The virus has no power over us because he lives. Because he lives, all fear and worry, loneliness and grief will be wiped away like those tears in heaven. So let your mind dwell. Let it dwell on things that are true and noble, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is admirable. If there's anything excellent or praiseworthy, think about these things. And the God of peace will be with you. It's a promise. It's a promise of the risen Savior. The resurrection answers every important question in life. So here's a little medley that I hoped might encourage you. Listen in, maybe hum these hum these tunes for the next few days. Peace.
God sent his son, they called him Jesus. He came to love, heal and forgive. He lived and died to buy my pardon. An empty grave is there to prove my Savior lives. Because he lives, I can face tomorrow. Because he lives, all fear is gone. Because I know he holds the future, and life is worth the living just because he lives. And then one day I'll cross the river, I'll fight life's fight, no war with pain. And then as death gives way to victory, I'll see the lights of glory, and I'll know he lives. Because he lives, I can face tomorrow. Because he lives, all fear is gone. Because I know he holds the future, and life is worth the living just because he lives. And life is worth the living just because he lives.